So I was working on a TV show called Revenge, and I'm on this dolly, and my phone rings. I look down, and it says governor's office. But I'm literally like, they're like, and we're rolling, you know. I had just turned the camera on. So I've got my hands on the wheels, and I've kind of got the phone like this, and I'm like, hello, what? And they're like, Ms. Page, we would like to invite you to become the next film commissioner of the state of Texas. And I was like, really? Oh, my God. Hold on a second. And we're rolling. So we go to do the next take. And, like, I can hardly even hold on to the wheels. Like,
howdy, y'all. I'm Brian Watkins here at the Beautio, having conversations at the Beautio. Our guest today is Heather Page, co-founder of ShineCo. And we are going to be talking a little bit about all things Heather and the industry and whatnot. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
I know it's kind of weird being on the other side of the camera. Is it? I mean, it is for me. You feel that?
Yeah, I never get over that feeling of how awkward it is to be on this side of the camera, frankly.
Well, for what it's worth, I think you look great. So,
well, thank you.
Although having the headphones is maybe a little hearing myself through the thing.
I like it. I'm in my own little. I'm really here and you're not. So that works.
Perfect. That's
right.
That's what we call a win-win. So for our viewers that might not have a frame of reference about who you are, give us the quick 50,000-foot view on your background, origin story, and how just a quick evolution of your career, and then how you came to be in Austin.
How I got to the Beautio? Yeah, got it. I was a kid always fascinated by the movies, and my dad had a disability where he wasn't able to walk and run and move around quite as much as other folks did. So on the weekends when we had a chance and I was a kid, and I had two younger brothers as well, we would go to the movies because that was something that was easy for him to do. And also because of the injury he had when he was a kid, when he couldn't play outside, growing up, he spent his time at the movie theater. So he was really interested in films and knew them all so well, and brought me into that fold. There was a TV show called Sunday Afternoon Movies with Reed Cordick that played Sunday afternoons and in Pittsburgh. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not Texas. And before my brothers got older, my dad wasn't into football, so we would watch these movies at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon when we came home from church. And, I saw Gaslight and, all these incredible black and white films that were, the films of his childhood that he really loved. And I just got this incredibly deep love for cinema through that time I spent lovingly with my father. So when I went to, in high school, I did all the theater stuff and, was just, in marching band and, but that was still my passion. So when I went to school,
What did you play in the marching band?
Well, I played mellophonium for a year and said,
is that even a thing? I think you're
I'm
making that up.
not doing it anymore. I want to be on the drill team. And I applied and I got onto the drill team. So I spent the rest of my life in a drill team. Anyway, went to a little college in Ohio, Denison University, and they had a cinema department with 6 to 10 students in it. It was really, really small. And since it was a liberal arts college, it was such a small component of the education. It was a full-on liberal arts education. Learned something about everything. And actually, I think that really fared well toward the way I looked at my future career and my ability to pivot within the career was, coming from that liberal arts background, which I think right now is actually becoming more essential, in this time and day and age, giving you skills and knowledge about a lot of things as opposed to a focus of a particular, even if you had a focus, for me it was filmmaking. But I left that school with the ability to do a lot of other different things too, if I could. So after that, I moved to New York and I went to NYU for graduate school. And I studied cinema studies there. And while I was there, I actually got to do some teaching not technically teaching, but these workshops for the undergrads, and I was really into post-production. That was my jam. Because I had a musical background and my love for music, I wanted to be a sound effects editor. So when I went to New York, that was my purpose. NYU was almost sort of just a side hustle as a way to get in, a way to have a place to stay in a dorm. You know, it made it very easy to move into the city. So I took that route and immediately started, you know, doing internships and, you know, assisting sound effects editors, assisting dialogue editors, and in the indie world. And so that's where I started. And
what were the tools at that time that y'all were using? I'm not going to get down a rabbit hole, but I'm kind of curious.
Oh no, the antique tools of, you know, magnetic sound recording on, you know,
Nagras.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and but you know, for post production, it was mag on celluloid. And sometimes, you know, it was interesting. I was talking to someone about it the other day that we use this thing that is called echo, which is very much like acetone. And we used it sort of to clean up tracks, make things clean. And I would actually literally use it with a razor blade, put that on the mag track to sort of strip the tracks off so that, you know, you could go into a mix and, you know, you could dial out the sound and all of that kind of stuff. But if you wanted to make sure it happened every time and nobody was screwing around with your soundtracks, you could actually like shave the mag off the film itself. And then when you were done, you had all these little pieces of that everywhere. And so I would like use that stuff. I'd take a bath in it practically. I'm like, oh, this works so well. Well, it's like so bad for your liver. You know, I don't even think it's, yeah, well, people don't use it that way anymore, but I'm not even sure if it's like something that you can even use anymore. But very similar to acetone, you know, really very a manual process to be sure, a slow process. But I like the fact that it was a deliberative process. You know, you could really think about it when you're moving a track slowly back and forth and back and forth. And you're physically doing it too. So when you feel that, I think it's an added layer of, I would like to say, artistic venture. I don't know, but
that's fair.
It was really I loved it until I hated it. Yeah,
right.
I loved it till I hated it. And at a certain point, I was like, I am so sick of being in this room 15 to 18 hours a day in the dark. It was the 80s, so there were, you know, there was Coke everywhere. You know, it was just, or people were just drinking. Not to say that that was like that everywhere, but I mean, I had been in my share of cutting rooms that were like that. And I was just like, well, you know,
cutting rooms.
Yeah. If I'm going to, you know, be in a place working in this industry, I think I would like some fresh air. I think I'd like to see different places. I'd like to travel. This room is not doing it for me anymore. You know, I'd like to be on the giving end of it, not the receiving end of it, you know, which is what post-production is. And I loved it till all of a sudden I just didn't. And so I started seeking out camera and being a PA and whatever would come its way. And I landed in the lap of a camera department as a camera PA. And once I saw that, I was like, this is what I was born to do. And, you know, when I was in college, you couldn't get me near a camera. It was sort of this alchemy that, you know, light and shadow and chemicals. And I just, wow, you know. But once I was there, I loved it.
What was that first foray like? What was the stuff that y'all were shooting? What were you shooting on? And how quickly were you able to ascend the
well, I just got super lucky. I was working on a little like $1.5 million movie, an indie movie that was shot in Pittsburgh. So I went home. It was in the summertime, so I got to stay at home. You know, they didn't have to put me up. And they first hired me to be the interlock projectionist, which I used that projection system all the time in post-production. So And I was like, look, I'll work for free during the day, and you just have to pay me for the projecting part. And after like a few days, the camera crew came up to me and they said, you're from here, we're looking for camera PA, and we're not happy with the list that the production people gave us. Do you know other people? And I was like, and by then I was actually, once again, inside for days and days. I was like, I don't know the first thing about camera, but I can whip up a good cappuccino and I'll haul your crap anywhere you want. And they were like, you're hired. So, yeah. And then the first day I went on the camera truck, I saw, this is back in the day, they were pulling the movement out of the Panavision Gold camera. And, the guy was going into the dark room and he comes back out and voila, filled magazines. And I was just like, this is where I belong. And they beat me up so bad and in a good way, because they were all looking for they were all from New York, and they were looking for someone to fill the place of the second assistant so they all could move up. And so that job was nothing but a 100% training course for me so that I could go from camera PA and loader to a second AC on their next job so they all could move up. And that's exactly what happened. So I got lucky.
So you're about halfway between where it started and ending up here at the Beautyo. So after that, and things must have taken off quite quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you struggle like everybody else to find your next job. And I lived in New York and did a few more jobs there. And then they all moved to LA. And so 6 months later, I moved to LA. But once I moved there, they had already found a replacement for me. So I had to find people. And I knew, other people who had moved there as well. Yeah. And, I just did what everybody does. You go and, you go to all the rental houses, you meet people, you offer to, label their cases for them and clean their lenses for them and do all those things just to meet people so that they can see you're a hard worker. And, a few weeks later, I got my first job. I don't even know how I got that first job, but, I just got lucky. I moved from job to job to job for years.
As a second AC, then first AC.
Yeah. And then camera operator.
Yeah. So what was the first camera operator gig?
I did a dog commercial, a dog food commercial for John Schwartzman. And I had been his B camera focus puller on a few movies. And he knew I wanted to move up. So he moved me up on a Beneful dog food commercial. Mm-hmm. It was great.
Well, I mean, you just skipped like a huge thing. And, and once again, we don't want to spend 15 minutes, doing the story arc. But by that time, when you get the opportunity to be a camera op, you had already worked on real movies. So what was the first real movie you worked on, and in what role was that? Something that people might have seen.
They were all real movies. I mean, whether they were like super low budget or not. Like my first movie in LA was a movie called The Dark Backward. And it was definitely an indie movie. Yeah. But, I met all new people I hadn't known before, and I wound up working with them again. So that was cool. I worked, my first union job was a show called Mr. Jones, starring Richard Gere.
So that was
early
your first,
90s.
That was your first introduction to, celebrity and working with like an established actor or a screen personality that people would know.
No, I mean, from the very get-go, every show had at least a couple people that people would know. Okay. Like, I know this is like an old guy, but Cesar Romero was on my very first movie. I was like, oh my God, Cesar Romero. And then I didn't realize it until after it had happened, but Doris... Okay, this is
was it Leachman? Doris Leachman?
No, that's Cloris Leachman.
Oh, it's not the same, is it?
No, Doris. What is her last name? Doris Roberts, who was in that TV show with Ray Romano. Oh, yeah. Well, she was in that movie. She played Cesar Romero's wife. So come on.
That must have been cool as hell.
Cool. Yeah. But, you know, you work with those folks. That's what you do.
Okay.
So,
So now you're camera operator.
so I moved up. Yeah. You know, I was a second assistant for 2 or 3 years. And then I moved up to what to this day I think is my favorite job is focus puller. I just loved that job. It was hard. You know, it was all my responsibility to get it right all the time. And so there was no blaming anybody else for anything. And I really just loved that job. And also my team, the operators I worked with, I loved those operators. And my second assistant, Chuck Katz, he's just the best. And well, other ones that I had too were just, God, it was such a great team. You know, it was hard to move up because it was so good. And then, but then
were you forced to move up? I mean, is that the way that
No,
works? Is that funnel?
I started realizing I wasn't getting to work quite on time. Like you can't be, you know, you can't be a minute late. And I was getting to be a minute late. So I knew I was getting bored. And so once that happened, I was like, okay, challenge myself or move on. So I decided so I challenged myself and moved up to operator. And I had people who were encouraging me. And the first movie I worked on was called The Majestic. It was a movie Frank Darabont did after he did The Green Mile. And that was
Jim Carrey, right?
With Jim Carrey, yeah. And so the team decided to move me up whenever they had multiple cameras. I would just move up, and then the whole rest of the team would move into my spot and adjust accordingly. And so that was my first real credit at that.
Right. And y'all were shooting on film? Mm-hmm. So that was all Super 35?
I was, no, I mean, we were anamorphic, so it was just 35, but yeah.
Right. Very, very cool. So then you stayed in that camera operator position for
10 years, something like that. 5 or 10 years. I don't know.
And then the evolution coming out of that, where does one go from?
Well, I started to get the same sort of, I'm not showing up to work on time. I'm not pushing hard enough. I'm not, you know, at the same time, the industry felt like it was changing a little bit, at least in terms of cameras. So I was ready for a new challenge. And I just happened to hear about the film commissioner position being open or becoming available in the state of Texas. I decided to apply, but I mean, I was a camera operator. You know, you don't hire a camera operator to be the film commissioner of, you know, a gigantic state like Texas until you do. And I mean, I was shocked when I got the phone call. As a matter of fact, this is kind of a fun story. So I had 5 interviews for that job. And I actually asked my friend, Kathy Kiada, a costume designer, to go with me and find some clothing to wear to the interviews. Because up until that point, I'd only worn black T-shirts and jeans for like 15 years. I didn't even know what somebody interviewing for a job would look for in clothing. So she set me up. And I think, you know, I give her a lot of credit for helping me get those jobs and like at least look in the part. But So I'd had the 5 interviews. I was told I wasn't going to hear an answer for quite some time.
And you weren't living in Austin at that time.
No, we were in Los. Yeah, we were. No, we were living.
Oh,
in
you
Austin.
were living in Austin.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
okay.
I was doing a job in LA. That's why that was confusing.
Okay.
So I was working on a TV show called Revenge, and I'm on this dolly, and my phone rings. Well, it's not ringing because I've got it on silence, but I look down and it says governor's office. But I'm literally like, they're like, and we're rolling, you know. I had just turned the camera on. So I've got my hands on the wheels and I've kind of got the phone like this and I'm like, hello, what? And they're like,
I'm getting a visual.
Heather, this is the Human Resources at the governor's office. We'd like to talk to you a moment. And I was like, can you hold on? Just hold on. And then it was like, and action. And we're doing this thing. And I got the phone here and I'm like, I'll talk to you in a minute. And, we push in with the dolly and cut. And I'm like, hey, yes, what? And like, I couldn't be bothered.
That's so LA.
You know,
that's such an LA. And it's so a counter to like the person that I know you to be. That's so funny.
And they're like, Ms. Page, we would like to invite you to become the next film commissioner of the state of Texas. And I was like, really? Oh my God. Hold on a second. And we're rolling. And so we go to do the next take. And like, I can hardly even hold on to the wheels. I'm like, what's happening? You know, I'm paying attention. We do 2 or 3 takes. And it's so hard to get somebody from the outside world to understand what you're doing, you know, and that you're like going back to 1. You've got to tell people what you need to have cleaned up. And then you're rolling again. And you're like, I'm so sorry. You know,
this is like a 5-minute phone call.
Yeah. So, and then they get off and I'm like, I'm sorry, I've got to go. So, you know, I find some place to talk to them about it, but it was something.
Well, so just following up on that, what was the back end of that conversation when they made you the offer? What were the logistics? And I mean, was there anything that you're like, oh shit, I can't, I got to really think about this?
They were like, and you have to start in 2 weeks. And that's sort of, you have to start in 2 weeks. I mean, everything else we were able to negotiate or whatever, but that was the deal. And, yeah. So I was like a day player. So I was like, fine, see you guys. I'm going to Austin.
Right. Because you would have had to have given notice to the crew that you were with, like, hey, I got to go.
Yeah, no, I was a day player, so it was perfect.
Talking about the Film Commission, right? That's a fascinating story about how you came into that role. What was your political acumen at that point? Because I would imagine, as a Pennsylvanian, California, coastal, Hollywood type worker, the Texas political ecosystem is full of characters and fuckery. I mean, it's just, and so did you have enough political acumen and awareness to know what you were stepping into, and what did it look like to get up to speed with that role of not just being the creative side and wanting to be an artist and industry advocate, but navigating the waters of the Capitol? What was that whole process like? And did you feel like you had the chops to step in right away and be able to go toe to toe with those characters?
Well, I didn't really have to go toe to toe with anybody. I was appointed by Governor Rick Perry, and he was like, girl, you're in charge of the film industry here. Come and see me if you have any issues. Otherwise, I've got your back. And I mean, he was great to work for. He was really great to work for. Everyone in his office was very supportive. And he kind of just said, we picked you because of you, so go for it. And I was like, okay. I mean, I had been working as a freelancer for, 20 years, 25 years. Oh. And so like if I got fired, so what? I mean, so what? I'd go back to operating again. And also it's just, I mean, I think that scares a lot of people when they get into these positions, and it makes them lose sight of the visions they have for what they're supposed to do, what they need to do, and their moral compass. And I just didn't have that problem because I felt like I had something I could fall back on if I needed to. Mm-hmm. I had been given a blessing the goal was to bring more production to the state. And to me, I didn't know I knew what the politics were about that because I had been on the board of TXMPA, and I had been working with TXMPA just as a volunteer and an advocate for that organization for, 5 years or so before that. So I knew what the stakes were, but I also knew that if I had a chance to get in there, I'd do this, I'd do this, I'd do this, I'd do this. And at that point in time, nobody had really been the film commissioner for 18, 19 months. And so they needed to fill the vacuum. And I just walked in there with a ton of energy. I think I helped the staff there, who was maybe a little demoralized because there was no sort of rudder. Yeah. And, I also, at the end of a day, when you work on a film set, you thank everybody for their hard work. I mean, everybody thanks everybody every single day. And if you don't, you should. And if you don't, good luck with having a long career, because everybody deserves the thank you. Everybody's put in a hard day's work. And I sort of took that to the film commission, and people were sort of like, oh, like,
How were they again?
anyway, it was, I just wanted people to feel like what they did was valuable, and that if they didn't feel like their work was full of value, that we would find a new road for them to find value, because I don't want anybody on my staff who's not doing anything or doesn't feel like they're making a difference. There weren't enough of us for such a huge state to not make a difference. So let's find ways that everybody uses their best skills together to make a difference. And so that's kind of how I approached it. And, I also went to the governor and was like, this is before, when you could change the rates, the incentive rates are in rules. And, well, they were in rules. They are about to be, they're now in statute. But when they were in rules, I could make the changes. And so, when he asked me, like, what is the leading reason why? I was like, the leading reason why we're not seeing as much production is because we don't have competitive rates. So I had to show he and his team, what could be a competitive rate, or at least it was a better place to start than where we were. And he was like, okay, pull the trigger on it. And we did. And during my tenure, we were able to increase production by 250%. We were starting to get major studios to come in for projects. And, we hadn't really seen much of that in a while. And, I'm really very proud of that. But it wasn't me. It was, the governor's office and the entire team at the Film Commission who really spent a lot of time convincing folks that we could make a difference. And, the hardest part was the funding mechanism of having to go to the legislature every 2 years. And that, sometimes we had amazing success. Sometimes we didn't have great success. And it was the funding that wound up being, of course, the incentive rate as well. But the funding and the lack of consistency in the funding, every business likes to have consistency and certainty. And the film industry is no different. And until we got that, which we got this last legislative session, it was always going to be risky for television shows specifically, more specifically than the other productions, for them to come in because they don't know if there's going to be money for the second, third, fourth, fifth episode or whatever. And so, we did what we could do within the confines of what we had. But if, when the legislature gives the Film Commission $22 million for 2 years, and we're up against behemoths like Georgia and Louisiana and California and New York and other countries, we weren't in the battle, but now we're definitely in the battle.
So in terms of actual numbers, what was the state of the Film Commission when you showed up? What had they been working with budgetarily at that point? Or not budgetarily, but what was the incentive package looking like when you took office versus what it looked like when you left 5 years later? Because you had enormous success, I know.
Well, no, it was up and down.
Okay. Every 2 years, right?
Yeah, it was up and down. I mean, after my first legislative session, we got as high as up to $95 million, which was a big jump from, I can't remember where it was. It might have been 40. I don't know. I can't remember. And that's over a 2-year period. Yeah. But then my second or third legislative session, it went down to $22 million. And, that's just really tough.
Why? Lack of political will and just, chicanery at the Capitol and, trying to scratch these backs like I was talking about.
People, the legislators, had other priorities. Yeah. And they still did not understand that this is not about Hollywood. It really is about jobs, and it's also about spending in communities. It's as much about spending in communities as it is about jobs. But it's also like, people who are doing stories about Texas that we all can be proud of. When they shoot in Louisiana or elsewhere, Georgia or anywhere else, we're losing opportunities to tell our own stories and our culture. Right. And I don't think that really hit home until this past year. And people were like, we're not in charge of our own destinies here, and this is an important industry and an important cultural opportunity. So let's do it.
What would you say you're specifically most proud of during your tenure over there? Is there something that you can point to? Because the numbers speak for themselves, right? But is there like a specific thing that you're like, yes?
Honestly, I know this sounds strange, but bringing happiness back into that office, I'm really proud of the fact that everybody got something to do that they cared about. And because from there, everybody was able to contribute and make a difference. And, also, put the Film Commission back in the minds of people as an ally to helping them get what they need done. So there are a lot of little things, or, maybe even bigger things. But I think trying to bring them together as a team. And honestly, I kept calling them my crew because that was a language I was used to using. Right. But I also treated it like that. It's like, we're not going to think about things for years before we make a decision. Yeah. It's like the sun's going down. We have to make a decision today, like in the next 10 minutes. I believe really strongly in when I hear something or I'm learning something or somebody's telling me something, to count to 10. That was like my camera operator rule, count to 10 before making a decision. So I really believe in that. But I also was like, let's not overthink this for a million years. Yeah. Let's just get to it. People are waiting.
What was the biggest challenge when you were helming the Film Commission? Like, what were some of the most difficult hurdles to overcome while you were in that role?
I think the hardest thing was really getting people to understand that the money goes into the communities. That the incentive money goes back to the communities. Right. And then it's not Hollywood.
Now that makes sense. Do you feel like coming from the camera department in the industry and having, hard skills in that space, do you feel like that was really more of a blessing or a curse when you shifted into the more political role of commissioner? Do you feel like being a bit of a, an outsider, not a bureaucrat, not somebody from that? Because, who else are they going to get, right? But do you feel like having come from the camera department was a benefit for you?
I think for people, for legislators willing to listen or wanting to listen or just even wanting to understand, that helped me a lot because I could describe a set better. Clearly, and the benefits clearly, like, oh, I have a nice house because I've been a camera operator and I can pay my taxes, that kind of thing. Sure. Where if I was just someone who was like an advocate for it, but didn't tell the story helped, if you know what I mean.
Bingo. Well, that's just it, right? Because as a storyteller, you're able to impart that skill set to convince them, hey, this is the value, here's the story. You can tell them a story in the real world to help them let us make stories in Texas. So yeah. I feel like that was kind of a nice thing. And as an aside, as we wrap up this section, I got a call from your office when I was still a fairly new editor and was giving the opportunity to edit the reel for the Texas Film Commission website. And when I got that call from you and your people, my heart went aflutter because basically I was told you can touch any piece of content that was shot in Texas, any movie, any TV show, anything. And as I began to go, and that's when I reached out to Chris Blankenship. I'm like, Chris, how do I edited like a 12-minute reel. And it was up there for years.
Cool.
But it was super cool because I called Chris Blankenship. I'm like, hey, man, I've been given an opportunity to touch any film ever shot in Texas to put together a reel showing the scope, scale, and awesomeness of Texas. How do I get this footage? And Chris introduced me to a software program that allowed me to pull that stuff down and be able to cut it. So I just wanted to say, having the opportunity to get to edit the Texas Film Commission reel for me was it was awesome. It was really, really cool. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Pivoting over to the state of the film industry in Texas, right now, what strengths make the Texas production footprint valuable, right? What is it that, I guess we should maybe back up a little bit and say that our good friends at Media for Texas, Chase and Grant were able to pull that thing across the finish line with your help and with our help in a small way. In fact, Chase is going to come sit with me next month and talk about that.
Right.
What do you feel like in the wake of that massive legislative success positions us to be able to capitalize on that?
Well, I mean, there's some obvious changes that are terrific. The fact that you can get up to 31% incentive, where before the highest you could get was 22.5 or maybe 25. I mean, that is a real game changer, and that puts us in, competing with places like Georgia. And I think that we've hemorrhaged mostly to Georgia in the past. In the past 10 years, that's been our biggest challenge, has been Georgia. Louisiana too, but Georgia. Excuse me. But and there's some other things there that are really terrific. But I think that, along with the fact that Texas just has a geographical diversity that other states don't have. We've got everything here but snow-capped mountains. And if you want snow-capped mountains, then, perhaps you should just go down the street to, a virtual production company like Stray Vista or something, and you can get that, there's very few things that we don't have in real life here. And still, that is it can be a very economical way of shooting, because you don't have to build those sets or build all of the sets. Right. So much of it is already there for you. And I think in terms of like shooting things that feel and look and are supposed to be about Texas also, like you can tell when something's not shot in Texas because, you can just tell there's just a cultural way we deck out our bars and our hospitals. And, there's just something about it that feels Texan. And that comes from, having your production here and going and looking for your set decoration in the place where it all happens, in reality. That's why Friday Night Lights seemed so authentic, because it was, I think right now, like my favorite show on TV right now is The Pit. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'd be like, oh yeah, The Pit. Well, nobody's using the accents. Every once in a while, somebody's wearing something like a Pittsburgh Penguins t-shirt or something like that. But like for a Pittsburgher, we know that is nothing like Pittsburgh, except for the hard work that all these, characters do. And if they shot it in Pittsburgh, it may. But that's what's great about shooting things here. Yeah. If you want something to have the feel of Texas, there's no better place to do it. And now with the financial incentive being so much more secure and also long-lived, it's going to be available for, at this point, it's 9.5 years left of this $1.5 billion funding. And that makes it possible not only for productions to come and look at doing TV series or longer projects here, but it also, as it matters to my company, the Shine Company, to build facilities here. Nobody was willing to build facilities here, or very few people were, because of the uncertainty of, will the business be here in another 2 years or so? But now that they know that there's at least a 10-year window, it seems to pencil out better for folks, and they're willing to take the risk. And so for us to start having purpose-built stages here, and more going up all the time, we're now in a place where it isn't just sort of like, we've got no place to do this. So we've always had some places to do it, but now we can compete on that level too by the creation of, purpose-built production facilities.
So to that point, as you transitioned out of your role as Texas Film Commissioner, you co-founded the Shine Company, right? What was the driving force behind creating this consultancy, right? I mean, is it fair to call it a consultancy?
That's what it is, yeah.
And so what was the driver behind doing that?
Well, I left the film commission, pardon me, in large part because my dad had dementia. And I wanted to spend some time with him while we still could have quality time.
Sure.
And then my mom got sick after that. And so I really had like a 5-year period after the film commission where I had a lot of time to think about things. And there were some things I felt like I hadn't finished at the film commission. And also my love for the industry. You know, my husband, of course, Todd McMullen, is a director of photography, and there's nothing I'd like to see more than to see him work in Texas or at home here in Austin, so that we could, don't have to travel. I don't have to travel so much, and be together and be in our home. So there were just a lot of reasons why I felt like there were some other things I could do, and I felt it was really important not to try and do what the Film Commission was doing, because they are better positioned than anyone to do those things. So I didn't want to step on any toes and try and do any of that kind of overlap, or, the film commissioner who doesn't want to leave or is gone and can't, that wasn't it at all. It was just there were some things that someone on the outside could go more deeply into and assist businesses and communities in a way that, there were limitations for the Film Commission to do. And my partner, Mindy Raymond, who ran TXMPA at the time and then also ran a studio in Bastrop, a small studio in Bastrop, we both, and I was running Austin studios for Austin Film Society, or I had just started doing that. We realized that there was just so much more that both of us were getting called to do all the time. Yeah. And so we were like, we were getting a lot of film commission calls, and we're like, we're not really the film commission. As a matter of fact, here's their number. But at a certain point, we were getting questions that we knew were questions they were out of their sphere. And so we decided to sort of, look at that and see, is there a service or services here we could do to be helpful and also be in the community ourselves. So that's what we did.
How would you define the mission of ShineCo?
Well, ShineCo's, here to bring production and communities together for the greatest mutual benefit. By that, we sort of believe in sort of a virtuous cycle of production, that if production can find its place, a home in the state, literally anywhere, then the production after the production leaves, there's an opportunity to build film tourism around that production. And so that can leave the community not only with the short-term benefits of the production money that comes in the hotels and, the spending that they do, but also to attract people to that area by whatever footage was shot there or the TV show that, inevitably is seen around the globe. And, bringing people to the area to, feel those feelings that they are reminded of a show that really means something to them. And that's basically what film tourism is. And it is the fastest growing segment of tourism currently. And there's nobody with a deeper history of film tourism, well, not film tourism yet, but film production, than the state of Texas. The first Academy Award winning film was shot in San Antonio, Wings. So we go back a long, long time, and our job is to help communities unearth that information and create an awareness about it in a way that draws tourists to them. And then when people see that as well, it continues that circle along, and through the film production and the tourism itself, it also shows people the community and the locations, thereby attracting more film production. That's our goal, is to help communities create that cycle. And so we do that, through the film, how we help communities with film tourism, and also how we help businesses develop facilities. by helping them through the Media Production Development Zone incentive that's available through the state, and also helping them, right size the facility for the needs of Texas and also the needs of the future, because the future of filmmaking isn't necessarily what the future was. Obviously what was happening 10, 20, 50 years ago. And everybody has a dream of like massive studios, but production's different now, and we want to make sure that people are successful for the long term and not, big studios that open up all over the place only to be closed down 5 or 10 years because the nature of the industry's changed.
Well, and that's a perfect segue to my next question, which would be, what's the highest level view, the 50,000-foot view of Texas in the next 10 years being an epicenter for content creation and media, while understanding the landscape is changing so quickly, which we will then segue into the AI space? I kind of want to just get your take on that quickly. I know it's a rabbit hole, and we can certainly spend a whole nother podcast talking about that, and we'll talk about that with Todd. And of course, my good friend Ken Miller over here, Monty Fisher, all you guys are DPs, that poses an existential threat to that lifestyle. But talk, if you can, briefly about where you see in the next 10 years the established footprint and foundation that we have because of the new legislation and the film incentives going through the maybe next decade or so. What's going to create that synergy to keep Texas as a epicenter for content creation and media at large?
Like you said, it's an entire episode, if not a college
Series.
course for a semester. I'd say most of our tools are now right at hand for us. And, we have a supercharged group of film commissions in the state who have used the time since the legislation was passed to be prepared and, ready, meeting everyone from, major studio heads to local filmmakers to streamline, make sure everybody understands what's available, and to market the crap out of it.
Right.
And so I think that they're sort of our first line, and they are energized and focused and wise and really ready to go. They've been ready to go for years, but now with this extra push, they are in a place. And because that push happened with the passing of the incentives, there's more support behind everybody from communities to do this. All these communities want this to happen. So they can get a piece of it too, not just that. The Texas Film Commission as well. And their Film Friendlies program, Film Friendly Communities program, that has been really instrumental to getting a lot of small towns across Texas, legitimately available to be in the pipeline for film production. So all that's really good. We have hemorrhaged crew and, intellectual property and talent that way for years and years because of the uncertainty. But I think that their people are turning around and coming back. I think at the scale at which we will start ramping up, hopefully, fingers crossed, but I'm hoping within the next, 6 months or so, once the new rules have come out that give people certainty about what the program's rules specifically are, because you need to do that. If you want to get an incentive, you need to know what you're signing on for. Yeah. That stuff will, I think that'll have a really positive impact toward people coming and looking, at different places too to shoot. The other thing is the technology has changed. So projects are still big. Projects can be small. They're all over. They can be micro. They're all over the place in their scale. Not just the talent scale, but the scale of the equipment being used. So communities of all sizes can see production in a way that they couldn't before. I would say the thing that's will be an immediate challenge, but is something that is being worked on quickly by anyone who has an opportunity to make a difference this way is to increase the workforce, because the incentive program only works for applicants if you hire Texans. And so ramping up a larger amount of trained people to work on shows is really essential to the success of the program.
That's a good point. And for our audience that might not understand, you were using the term they, meaning multiple commissions within Texas. Can you give me a quick overview of what that looks like? So we've got the Texas Film Commission, but you were talking about individual commissions scattered throughout the state. What does that mean exactly?
Right. Well, there are some city film commissions located, and there's some county film commissions, regional film commissions around the state. The state film commission does not have oversight over any of them.
Oh,
they're kind of all in partnership. Okay. But the state obviously, they work in partnership with these other film commissions. But, it's Amarillo has a film commission, Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, Corpus Christi, Brownsville, El Paso. And then there's some other smaller ones as well. And I'm sorry if I'm leaving some of them out, but
no, that's okay, because
I'm not the film commissioner anymore.
Touché. That's perfect. As we approach the finish line, what advice would you give to somebody today that's starting in production, based on your decades-long experience? What do you think maybe is a good takeaway for somebody who's fresh in the production space?
Well, production is different than when 25 years ago. I mean, I wouldn't recommend the exact same path that I took.
Sure.
I just wouldn't, because there are different ways people communicate with each other. And I think communication is the most important thing. I would say the first thing I would recommend people do is that they get to know people. And you don't need to have a massive network, although a big network is always nice. Like, it can be exhausting chasing a million people down to stay connected in the network. But find your tribe and some people who share your beliefs in things, and in a way you can work as your own little pod to share those kinds of connections. I think people need to be sort of careful and not out there too much with social media. But I think social media can be really helpful in terms of identifying your skills and your brand. And so I like the use of those tools as well. And then I'd say the last thing is, even if you don't share that you're the smartest person in the room, try really hard to know as much as you can about so many sides of the industry. And also just watch a lot of films and a lot of TV shows, and keep that muscle strong, the storytelling strong, and how, no matter how you choose to storytell. I am about visual storytelling, so that's what I focus on. And find those thought leaders and learn as much as you can about that. And, practice, even, there's no excuse for not practicing, because everybody has a phone now. I couldn't afford camera equipment back in the 80s when I was going to school. I had to go to school because that's where the equipment was, and we didn't have phones. But now, create, just practice, because nobody makes a brilliant first project. Everybody, even if they're not admitting it, has made some small things or other things beforehand just to practice the trade, to get better at their editing, to get better at their visuals, to get better at, the emotional, concepts that they want to get through the film. And remember why you got in it in the first place, and make sure that that's a real reason that you can hold on to for an entire career. Because, the money ain't there all the time, and the hours are super long, and the rejection is real, and all these things happen. And if you, some people just, that's just not where they ultimately need to be. So, have a really good conversation with yourself about what it is you can put up with.
Really well said. last thing, just anecdotally, because we're out of time, but the transition from film to digital in the camera space, that happened on your watch.
Yeah, it did. But I was so lucky. I was a camera operator when it switched. And so for me, the only change I really had to deal with that was really hard. I mean, was something real, was like the switch. Like when you're next to a Panavision camera or next to a 35 millimeter film camera and you turn the switch, you hear the camera whir, and you hear that. And you feel it a little bit too, so you know it's on. But, with a digital camera, you press the button and, aside from the little LED somewhere on the camera that says you're rolling, and some time code somewhere, which I'm not looking at because I'm too busy paying attention to other things. I don't even know if I got the camera rolling or not. And so I did lose a couple shots because I actually hadn't turned the camera on.
Yeah, but don't you throw your first AC under the bus?
Of course. Yeah. But I mean, for me, aside from that, the other change is like using a monitor as opposed to an eyepiece or whatever. Yeah. Not a big deal. And I was really grateful that I didn't have to learn all the technology the assistants do. I mean, now it's like an everyday occurrence where they have to learn new stuff. And, I was firmly in the house of, Movie Cam and Arri and Panavision, and that's all I really had to worry about were those, 8 or 10 cameras for the most part. And now it's like it's all over the place, and I'm grateful that I didn't have to deal with that learning curve.
Fantastic. So Heather, before we wrap up, what's on the horizon for you next, and how can people get in touch with you and the ShineCo and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we've got some exciting projects on the docket for us. Not too much I can talk about in terms of some of them.
Go on.
But we are pretty excited about the opportunities that are in the future for facility development around the state. That's really, really exciting. And we're also hoping to be supportive of workforce development. There is a new part of the legislation that was passed that really supports growth in education for workforce training. And so that gets us excited. But we also have just brought on Terracana to work with us, putting production incentives together for the Film Commission. So if you're a project and you are looking for support in putting together your application and some guidance in that regard, we do that now too. Oh, and you can reach us at weareshineco.com, and lots of ways to connect with us there.
Well, that pretty much does it for today. This is Conversations at the Beautio, and I'm Brian Watkins signing off. Thank you, Heather Page, for making some time to do this. I really, really enjoyed it, and hopefully it wasn't too painful.
Likewise, it was really fun. Thank you for having me.